John chapter 11. This is an exciting chapter and lots of good things here. Let's just begin with verse 1. There was a certain man that was sick named Lazarus of Bethany, the town of Mary and her sister Martha. It was Mary which anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. This story takes place in Luke's Gospel in chapter 7. We get a little background if that's the same Mary. It doesn't tell us her name's Mary there, but there's it's a famous story about her coming into where Jesus was and anointing his feet with ointment. Anyway, go on reading. Therefore the sisters sent unto him, saying, Lord, behold, he whom thou lovest is sick. When Jesus heard that, he said, This sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God might be glorified thereby. Now, this is an interesting thing that he says, and it gives us a little clue into what he's doing here. We've seen several times in the Gospel of John where Jesus did unusual things. Things that were unusual because he meant to teach a spiritual message or teach something. And his intent, in every case, his intent is always the same. Now, please get this. His intent is always that people would believe in him. His intent for doing things is that the people at this time would believe in him. And really, the reason these things are written down for us is for the same purpose, that we would believe in him. And by that, I mean to trust in him and to put our confidence in him. Now, sometimes we say, well, I believe in him. And we do. We mean that. But what it really means is to put all of our trust and all of our confidence in him. And that is a growing process. We have to continually learn how to trust him more and more. I think sometimes the most spiritual people there are the people who are the most dependent upon him. I've read a lot about a man named Smith Wigglesworth, and I've talked about him before. And he was like that. That's the thing that impresses me about his life when I read about him. Here was a man who he just when you read about him, he just seemed he was just utterly dependent on God. That was his attitude about it. I can't do anything. I just depend on the Lord. He just depended on God. So that's something that we learn and we grow in. So his intent for doing this. Anton, would you give me verse 4 for a second? Oh, we don't have that on yet. As soon as Anton gets that back again. Do I need to push the... Okay. Anton, would you give me verse 4 in the Message translation? I think that's interesting what it says here. When Jesus got the message, he said, this sickness is not fatal. It will become an occasion to show God's glory by the glorifying of God's Son. So Jesus, when he got word that Lazarus was sick, he saw through the immediate circumstances, and he said, this is going to be a special or a special situation in which, what does it say? It will become an occasion to show God's glory by glorifying God's Son. Jesus, some of the things that he does in the Gospels, he has a bigger picture in mind than just meeting the immediate needs of the people in the story. He's got a bigger picture in mind, that is to, in this case it says, an occasion to show God's glory by glorifying God's Son, to the intent that people would believe in him, and to the intent that we would believe in him. Now, I want to say that to you, first of all, because he does things that are unusual in this story. For instance, Anton, if you go back to King James again, next verse, verse 5, says this. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister Lazarus, and when he had heard, therefore, that he was sick, he abode 2 days still in the same place where he was. Now, that's kind of strange, because when he heard that he was sick, he just stayed put. It says he loved Lazarus, but then when he heard he was sick, he just stayed put. Now, that's unusual. That is not what he usually... If you read the Gospels and read about Jesus, most of the time when people came to him, like in Matthew chapter 8, a centurion came whose servant was sick, and as soon as he got the words out of his mouth, Jesus said, I will come and heal him. There's another story in Mark chapter 5 about a man named Jairus, whose daughter was at the point of death. And when he came to Jesus, Jesus immediately turned and followed him. He says, come and lay your hands on her that she may live. Jesus, in every other case, this is a sort of a one-time occurrence here, but the reason, and I'm trying to explain it this way, that he saw this as a special occasion to show something unique and special about God. This is not ordinarily what he does. Now, I want to say this to you because I don't want anybody to, don't put yourself into this story and say, well, he's just, I've brought God my needs, he's just ignoring me for a few days, No, that's not how he does things. This is a one-time thing. And there are stories like this in the Bible. Like, for instance, Abraham. God told Abraham to go up on a mountain and offer his son Isaac as a burnt offering. Listen, we don't ever read about that again in the Bible. And don't anybody here think God's telling you to go offer your children on a mountaintop. That's not why God, that is a one-time thing. And you know why He did that? He wanted to show a graphic illustration of how He, God, would offer His own Son as the sacrifice for sins with His covenant partner Abraham. A special situation. This likewise is a special situation. Jesus doesn't ordinarily behave this way. Nevertheless, here were people that He loved. And nevertheless, though this is a special situation, Mary and Martha, it says in the text that Jesus loved them, and we have to just assume that He knew what He was doing. When they came to Him with this situation, even though it didn't look like He was doing what they expected Him to do, we can learn from this that Jesus knows what He's doing. We can trust Him to know what He's doing. He knows how to take care of things. So, He abode, therefore, when He heard He was sick, 2 days still in the same place. And then after that He saith to His disciples, Let us go to Judea again. His disciples say unto Him, Master, the Jews sought of late to stone Thee, and goest Thou thither again? Jesus said, Are there not 12 hours in the day? If any man walk in the day, he stumbleth not, because he seeth the light of the world. But if a man walk in the night, he stumbles, because there is no light in him. Now what does all that mean? That means, previously He said, I'm the light of the world. We can assume that Jesus is walking in the light, or meaning walking in God's light. What He's saying to them is, look, folks, I know what I'm doing here. You know, they're trying to warn Him, see, the disciples. Listen, Jesus, maybe you don't know. Maybe you didn't realize. Maybe you didn't hear. The Jews are trying to kill you. You know, what do you mean we're going to go back to Judea? And He's saying, listen, I know what I'm doing. I'm not walking in the dark. I'm not stumbling. You know, that's what he's saying in this. Verse 11. For these things said He, and after that He saith unto them, Our friend Lazarus sleepeth, but I go that I may awaken him out of sleep. First observation we can make about this. Of course, we know from watching the movie, and we know from reading the story, Lazarus now is dead. From our point of view. From a human point of view. But notice that Jesus has a different attitude about death than the ordinary human attitude. You know, most people, death is the biggest, baddest, most terrifying thing there is to be afraid of. Jesus, you notice He's not afraid of death at all. In fact, He regards death. He says, I'm going to go wake him out of sleep. You know, in other words, it's no more big deal for Jesus than waking somebody up out of sleep. That's what He's saying. And that's a comforting thought. You know, Paul uses the same language when he's writing to the Christians in Thessalonica in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. He says, we should not sorrow as those who have no hope. And he said he's writing concerning those who have fallen asleep, meaning Christians who have passed on or Christians who have died. And Paul uses the same language. That's the way we should look at it. It's no more big of a deal than from a human point of view than falling asleep. This is showing you that Jesus is bigger than death. He's bigger and He's got more potency and more power, and He's going to demonstrate that in this story. So then the disciples said, Lord, if He sleep, He should do well. In other words, if He's taking a rest, let's don't wake Him up. Let's just let Him get His rest. They didn't understand what Jesus meant. Verse 13, Howbeit Jesus spake of His death, but they thought He had spoken of taking rest in sleep. Then said Jesus unto them plainly, Lazarus is dead. Okay, folks, you didn't get it? Let me just lay it on the line for you. So it's clear, He's dead. Now they got it. And I am, listen, verse 15. I am glad for your sakes that I was not there. To the intent, notice this, to the intent that you may believe. What's His goal for them? That they believe. What's His goal for us? That we believe. You know, I believe, I would say, and again, I got to say this is my take on it, this is my opinion. I believe that the beginning and end of everything God wants out of you is that you trust Him and that you believe in Him. That is it. That is it, the beginning and the end of it. That's why Paul said it's from faith to faith. It starts in faith, it ends in faith. He wants you to trust Him. He wants you to believe in Him. And Jesus said, listen, He's dead and I'm glad I wasn't there. To the intent that you may believe.